guys, welcome back to Our Non-Toxic Podcast. I'm Hannah, and this is episode 77. I have a few things to begin with, as per usual. First, I would like to acknowledge that I know my hair is a mess. I know that it is looking especially ratty today, and I would just like to offer this explanation. I'm trying to be better about doing no heat during the summertime, and I don't want to commit to no heat, zero heat, because that's something that I just know I feasibly will not be able to do. And I do love my natural hair, but it's like a sibling relationship. It's like it comes and it goes. I have good days and bad days. And this is going to be, I washed it Sunday. It's now Wednesday. It's been rained on. It's been wet and re-wet and sweated in and dried and slept on again. So it was a lot cuter a couple days ago, and it was laying really nice and so pretty. And I was like, oh, I've just been blessed with such good hair genes. Life is great. And I woke up today, didn't feel like rewashing and drying my hair at 7 a.m. So this is what we get. I just want to say, I'm not trying to act like this is some kind of fashion phenomenon, unless you think it's a big slay, in which case, yes, I did this on purpose. It did not just grow out of my head this way and then get chronically bedheaded. So I will be trying to wear more of my natural hair, which this is my first year having bangs and attempting to do so. So just bear with me. Just turn the other way if it's looking really especially disheveled or not attractive at any given point, and do me that small mercy. Next, if you will take a moment to acknowledge my sweater, it's going to have lighthouses all over it, and they're real lighthouses. They have the dates that they were built all over. We've got Lake Michigan, 1924. We've got Toledo Harbor, 1904. Anyways, I got this at a garage sale last year for 25 cents. I also got one of my favorite jackets ever, like that slick black moto style jacket that I had been eyeing on a bunch of other more expensive websites for months. And then I found one, like I said, at a garage sale for $1, and I was over the moon. And this weekend is Mother's Day, which is the Nixa citywide garage sale, and I'm about to tear it up with my grandmother. So if you're out on the streets of Nixa prowling about 8 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, you might run into me. Just know that I will be in an absolute daze. I'm going to have a mission. I'm going to have bloodlust in my eyes for deals. And if you stand in my way, I will be willing to throw down for some very discounted and gently used items. Next, I'm having to get this done early today because there is the possibility of severe weather, which I have lived in Missouri my whole life. Love storms. And I think that I am a little bit jaded as to how dangerous they really are, because I have been fortunate enough to never have experienced something significantly traumatic. We've had the ice storm. Of course, we had the Joplin tornado. And I was so young when those happened that, as bad as it sounds, I really only remember the excitement. Like, I remember being at church youth group whenever the Joplin tornado happened, and we all just the stir of something unusual happening and, the buzz in the air. I was too young to really understand consequences and, property damage and loss of life, things like that. So I also find storms very soothing to sleep to or to work, being at home and hearing the thunder and the rain in the windows. It's always been so comforting to me. So I have a really skewed perspective on storms, and I really probably need to get my head in a better, more adult mentality when it comes to them, because I don't panic like I should, especially being that our house is not a basement home. So we don't really have a super, super secure location to retreat to, but that's okay, because I'll call up old Bree and say, hey, can I come take shelter in your home? Because she is 11 houses down and she does have a basement. So Bree, if you're listening, just know you are my backup plan. Speaking of Bree, she's releasing this incredible line of hats for ALS Awareness Month, which is right now in May, in honor and memoriam of her dad. They have 3 colors right now. I think she's releasing more, but they say, don't sweat the small stuff. They're the cutest hats. I already bought one, and all the proceeds are being donated back to an ALS foundation in Springfield. So if you want to support her and have a super cute hat for the summer and match with me and whoever else buys one, then I would head on over to Skinwise on Instagram, make a purchase. It's also a collaboration with The Urban, which is Simone's hat business. So you can support everybody while you're doing so. Fabulous, Bree, you're amazing, and I love you so much. Next, I am taking a week off of running because I have run my body into the ground. I have 2 missing toenails, which I'm not going to show you because that is disgusting and depraved and vile. They're black and just missing, so not good. I'm sorry that I bring up my toenails every time. I love running, and the thing is, I use it as stress relief. So it never really feels like a chore. Sometimes during the run, whilst running, it feels quite a bit like a chore, actually, an uphill battle in the most literal sense. But it's like the act of running and the exertion of so much energy that helps me maintain control over my anxiety and crazy mental warfare. Not being dramatic, but I'm just getting to a point that I'm losing toenails. My feet are battered and blistered. Like I have just walked the journey with Jesus and Mary and Joseph from Jerusalem. I'm going to be biblically inaccurate, so I'm going to stop there. But I look like I have walked miles barefoot, and I don't even run that much. I'm a medium serious runner. I don't even know if I'm doing it right. Maybe that's the problem. But my shins are splinting so bad. If you've never had shin splints, just count your blessings. But it's whenever there's like certain tightness in the front of your shins, and it makes your shins feel like they are literally splintering apart. And whenever they get so bad, it doesn't just occur when you're running. It happens all the time when you're just living your daily life and trying to traipse about town. And now it's gotten to the point that I really can't ignore it. And my knees, I didn't know my knees could be tight. The sides and like back and just general tendon area of my knees all sore. And I actually am recovering. I know I joke that I am the worst at stretching and warming up, and I have been better at doing that. And you know what? I think maybe that is the problem. Maybe I should have just stopped and gone back to my cold opens with all my runs, and I wasn't really having issues then. Also, maybe it's my old age of 25 and my body's catching up with me. But I am doing the wise thing and taking a week off and doing all of the little lacrosse ball, foam rolling, everything that you're supposed to do so I can hopefully get back out there. So if I seem like I have extra nervous energy today, that is going to be the impending storm, the caffeine, and my lack of physical exertion. Moving forward. It's actually all the housekeeping I have. Amazing. Okay, so I have a quote that I want to share. This is not on topic at all, but I just happened to find it on Pinterest this morning whenever I was doing my wake up scroll, as all healthy people do. And it just kind of struck me, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, "If this is not the life you want to live, stop. Go in another direction. Do this as many times as it takes to live that life." And it seems so simple to think, if this isn't the life that you want, just change directions. And I feel like it's a luxury to be able to say you should just change directions, because I know that some people have, responsibilities and children and jobs and bills to pay, and they might be the single income for their family or the main income, and there's just not times that you can pick up and change. But I think that it's important to remember that all of that can be, all of the small ancillary things that surround your days can be changed. So if you don't like your route to work, if you don't like the traffic, then maybe leave earlier and just give yourself time to listen to a podcast, maybe this one, on your drive to work, and find time for peace for yourself. If you don't like, the lack of sleep and the dreariness, then find a way to get yourself to bed earlier. If you don't like the isolation in your life, put yourself out there, maybe reach out to some new people. I know that whenever I do this, I always struggle with feeling like I'm giving the most simple, common sense solutions to problems that people might genuinely be struggling with. But this quote just hit me because I think so often I even get stuck in thinking this is just how my life is. This is where I'm at. And you forget that you have so much autonomy and so many decisions on what you do and how you spend your days and who you talk to and what you take on. And the whole episode is kind of going to go into that direction. But that quote it kind of just hit me. And, you remember that you have free will. And I know that's kind of a common theme on TikTok with different jokes. Like when you remember you have free will and then somebody throws their coffee at the wall, that's maybe not the direction I'm going in. But I do think it's sometimes so simple that it's so commonly overlooked. And unless you have a situation that just doesn't allow you to pick up and change, which I realize that a lot of you do, you can make drastic changes. You can move across the country. You can change your job. And that's something that I just did not realize. And not that I would ever change anything about my life, because I love where I am right now. But looking back to whenever I was, 18, 19, figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, I just completely did not comprehend the vastness of the possibilities that were out there. And I think part of it was that social media was around, but it wasn't quite as accessible. Like the common people weren't being pushed to the other common people. So me as a common person with a 9-to-5, I was viewing everyone else, like the travel bloggers and the YouTubers, the influencers, and I wasn't really seeing people that were, my age and my situation with my skill level of, kind of average, doing these amazing things. Versus now with TikTok, you can see so many people that have made passions and careers and opportunities for themselves just out of, putting themselves out there. So there's just so many opportunities. And I think that to box ourselves in, especially at this young age of, low 20s, mid 20s, low 30s, and so on, to think, well, this is just my life. This is how it's going to be. And you're allowed to pivot and go in as many directions as you want to, as many times as you want to, which is also something that I get down on myself about, is that I tend to have so many little phases and little passions that I will stick with for a short period of time and love for about 6 to 8 weeks. And then I move on to the next thing. And then I think, well, what if I just really applied myself to the one thing? Like, what if instead of learning to rollerblade and draw and write, sad poetry in my free time and run, what if I just picked one thing and applied myself really hard to that thing? Would I be way more successful? Like, would the podcast be way bigger if I put all of my energy that I've spread across all of these dozens of different miscellaneous hobbies and interests? Would it be massive? Would my business be bigger? Would all of these things be different if I just picked one thing to specialize in instead of being okay or like a little bit above okay at everything? I don't know. But I also love the variety. And I think that maybe if I put all of my energy and pursuit and time into one thing, maybe I wouldn't love it so much. And right now I love that I'm able to love so many things, even if I'm unremarkable at most of them. So do with that quote what you will. Sorry if I just derailed on something that you don't care about. Next, we have our report. It's going to be a serious episode when I have the iPad absolutely bedeviled with notes. I'm still reading A Court of Wings and Ruin. I've been super slow with that. I did go to the pool yesterday, if you can tell by my sunburn. So sorry, don't crucify me for it. I did wear sunscreen, I just forgot. But I was kind of listening to an audiobook for part of it. And I like audiobooks, it's just that I can't keep myself on task as well. So I have to really focus harder to listen to the audiobook than I do to read the book, because the tangible nature of the pages helps me stay locked in. So I'm still reading it. I also have a couple friends that are catching up. They're in Mist and Fury right now. So part of me is tempted to just pump the brakes and wait for them so we can do a little read together. And that's the only way I could really do a book club, because I'm not mentally able to commit to recurring things besides this podcast, for which I've been doing 77 weeks in a row. But if you asked me to do a book club and read these exact same books and talk about them regularly, I would break out in hives and not be able to. But if it just happens to work out that way, then I'm good. And same thing with a half marathon. If I sign up for a half marathon, even one that's a month and a half away, I will lose all interest in running. It will start to feel like a chore. It'll start to feel like such a task that I cannot overcome or accomplish. But if I just continue to run and work up to that distance and then say one day just sign up for one, I think that I could probably swing that. So let's not dive deeper into that yet. Next, what I'm eating, stick with me. Aldi's has this incredible chickpea salad. It comes in a little plastic container, and it's just chickpeas, diced onions, some seasoning, some cilantro. It's very simple. I could easily make it myself, but I'd rather make the 5-minute drive to Aldi and buy 4 of them and then just eat them every day. So good. There's a surprising amount of protein in chickpeas, which are also garbanzo beans, in case you're wondering, but delicious. I've been having them so much. It's the perfect light snack for summer. And I also don't love eating meat. I don't know what it is. It's not, I wish I could say it was a moral thing or a connection to the animals. It's not. It's more of a texture thing. So it's not admirable. It's just that I don't know. It feels like I just don't enjoy it. I'm more of a carb girl. So the consistency of chickpeas and everything else, it feels more like a pasta. And maybe that's why I enjoy it. So highly recommend that. Just don't buy them out, because I will be very sad. Next, playing. I am in that stage with the Tortured Poets department where I listened to all of it. I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. She's amazing. She's a great lyricist. Love all the songs, but nothing jumped out to me. And then a couple days later, a week or so, all of a sudden you get one of the hooks stuck in your head, and then you have to go back and listen to it. So now I'm listening to But Daddy, I Love Him, Fortnite, The Prophecy, over and over. So I don't know what it is where they just have to stew in your mind before all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, I love these. I'm going to suck all of the life out of them. But that's where I'm at right now. So I was listening to I Can Do It With a Broken Heart on the way in. And then I got this random wave of emotion where I was listening to it and just picturing Taylor Swift, I guess. And I was like, she's just so strong and so tough, and she's been through so much, and I just admire her. And I don't really know where it came from. I think it was, the caffeine kind of kicked in, and the weather's kind of weird outside. The pressure in the air makes me have weird emotions. So I'm also not going to delve into that right now. Next. What am I obsessing over? Ted Lasso. That's so easy. I was skeptical, as I am with most things. I'm really behind on pop culture trends. I get onto things way late, and I don't know why. It's just because I have a hard time branching out, if you can imagine that. But whenever I saw Ted Lasso was so popular, I was like, what's the big deal? It's the guy with the mustache, and it's about soccer, and who really cares? How funny could it be? It's just really specific, and I don't think I would enjoy it. Finally, we watched The Crowded Room on Apple TV with Tom Holland. I think I mentioned that. we already had Apple TV. We're like, let's give this a whirl. We start watching it. I'm not kidding. We have 3 episodes left. We've been watching it for probably 11 days. There's 3 seasons. They have 12 episodes each. So we've just been tearing through it. And the episodes are not that short. At the beginning, they're probably 20 or 30 minutes. And then they get to like 50 to an hour, to an hour plus. And it's just like the most amazing show where they combine witty dialogue with super, super layered, nuanced characters. You care about all of them. Everyone has like this arc that feels special and personal to them. It's just great. I am going to be so sad when it's over because when you watch a show and you almost like get used to living in that setting, like your evenings, for me, it's evenings with Austin in the living room, having her little bland, healthy meals, watching her show. And then you go to that place, every few nights for some time while you're watching a show, and then it's over and you're kind of like, you long for that part and you miss that city or that clubhouse or that, environment. So whenever the show ends, there is a little bit of a mourning period where you miss it. Not me talking about mourning Ted Lasso being over, but it's just really good. I've heard mixed reviews about the ending, so stay tuned. We'll probably finish it tonight while we're taking shelter, and I will update you next week if anyone cares, or on my stories, because I probably can't wait. And then finally, my last thing that I am treating myself to, what is this? Yeah, treating, is the moon pie latte once again. Moon mallow. It's fantastic, and it is seasonal, so if you guys haven't gotten one, I'm begging you on all 4s. I am pleading with you. Just go try it. It is the best thing ever. I'm also very sad because a barista that I love very much from Urban is leaving today, and I'm going to miss her. But again, it's like one of those faces that you see all the time that just makes you so happy. Also, I hope you guys enjoyed Hannah's episode. I thought she was just fantastic. She's a ray of sunshine. She's incredible, and I loved having her on. So next week we will have another guest, and then you are back to just me, and that is the pattern for the foreseeable future. Thank you for the continual listening. Today's episode is going to be about busyness and how we glorify busyness in today's culture. And my disclaimer is that I am so guilty of half the things that I'm talking about. And also it might sound like I'm just regurgitating things that I found on Pinterest, which I kind of am, but don't worry. I also am regurgitating things that I asked ChatGPT to prompt out for me. So it is unoriginal, but also with a little added dash of my own thoughts and opinions. As someone who's learning all of these things, I might sound a little contradictory, but just know that I am working on them. So here's my opinion. I've obviously talked about hustle culture. Bree and I have talked about hustle culture. We've had this dialogue for a long time, and everyone knows that in our current state of the world, and I think our country specifically, which I'm biased because I've only ever lived in our country, but we glorify how busy someone can be and how much you can have on your plate at one time, how much you can be juggling. And we never really stop to question why that is or whether or not busyness is actually something to strive for. And I had this idea for, a week or two now, just being that I'm slowing down and doing a lot of reflecting and doing so. But then I was listening to the sermon from my church this weekend, Life Church. If you are curious, I want to go listen to it. They're all on YouTube. It's life.church. But the pastor was talking about if you ask someone how they're doing, most of the time, you'll say, hey, how have you been? They won't say that they've been good or I'm well. They just say, oh, busy. And I was watching it while I was doing my makeup and I froze because that is something I've done so many times and I'm so guilty of. And it felt like such a call out because here I am thinking I'm unique for being like, oh, I'm so busy. But it just feels like a good, I don't know, it feels validating somehow whenever you can say, oh, I've been so busy. And sometimes it gives you a little get out of jail free card if you haven't followed up with somebody or you've kind of both mutually lost touch and you want to say like, oh, I've just been so busy, because then you can justify why you haven't done something. But also it makes it feel important, or it kind of gives that humble brag of I'm good, but I'm like so busy. I'm so stressed out at the same time. Like I've just been doing so many things. Because for me, sometimes if you just say like, oh, I'm good, like I'm doing great, sometimes it can feel like you're selling the whole complex life short by being like, oh, I'm good. Even though I know this is a way over analysis of just a polite interaction that most people have. But I don't know, sometimes it can just feel so simple and so disingenuous to say, oh, everything's great. How are you? So saying busy feels like it just encompasses more. And I don't know, since I started off on my own, which by the way, guys, my 3-year business anniversary of being self-employed is in 2 weeks. So I just realized that. I just saw it on my Instagram and I haven't decided if I'm doing anything yet because I do love to celebrate, but I also get uncomfortable celebrating myself. So maybe I'll buy myself a cake, but we'll see. Anyways, I have been doing this for 3 years almost, and the busyness has become so second nature to me that I think I forgot that there was another way. And whenever I worked full time for someone else, you have your set clock in time, your set clock out time. I didn't have access to email outside of work. So it's a lot easier to, contain your busyness to one portion of your day in your life. And now all of those borders have been erased, and, the boundaries are half-hearted, but I have work spilling into my personal life, spilling into my home time, and everything is kind of intermingled, and that's great. But at the same time, it definitely makes it difficult to separate what are things that I need to be doing and what are things that I have to be doing and what are things that I want to be doing and what are things that I'm manufacturing to feel important. So when I first was in the professional world, before I went self-employed, I've mentioned that I love to just be in meetings and go to committees and sign up for things. And I do still have so much of my business's success to contribute to those, or to attribute to those things, all the volunteering that I did and event committees, fundraising committees. Those ended up playing a really integral part of my success. However, I was signing up for them partially to make connections and to learn about things, but also partially to live out my, grown-up fantasy of attending meetings and to be a part of things and, carry a little clipboard and do all of that. So if I go back to the root of when I started being very busy, it was because I wanted to be busy and I wanted to be important. And even just the equation of busy to important is something that I think our society invented. It's never been that way before. At least in the 25 years that I've been around, I can't say that it's never been that way, but I think that there's a correlation that we have made that the more important someone is, the busier and the higher demand they have to be, which does tend to be true. The more that you are responsible for, the more that you have to attend, the more that you have to check up on, and the more that you're working on at all times. But that doesn't work on the inverse where you say if someone's not busy, they're not important. That's not a fair assumption. And I think that busy and important are not always synonymous. I also think that everything that we're busying ourselves with, they're not always important, necessary things. Let me get to my notes because I feel like I'm getting off track. Yes, so I'm guilty of overcommitting myself in order to feel superior. And that's just the honest truth of it, is that whenever I was working and wanting to feel important, then I had all of these role models, picture Brooke Davis in that season of One Tree Hill where she's has her coffee and her assistant and she's walking and she's change this, fix that, do this. That was everything I wanted to be. So everything that I was doing was with that vision in mind of you want to be a hustler, you want to be busy all the time, you want to be constantly in demand and moving. So I did that. And then going self-employed only perpetuated that belief, because whenever I was first self-employed, I only had probably 5 or 6 clients, and the busier that I was would mean the more security that I had. So I tried to continue to book more clients and to do everything else, which makes sense because you do have to pay your bills, and it just never really stopped. So I continued to add clients, and as I was fortunate enough to grow and get my name out there, then the demand kept coming, and all of that kind of came to a head last year, which was my busiest, my most lucrative, just dynamic year of growth and everything that I'm so thankful for. But that was the pinnacle of what I wanted to be. I was traveling, I was working with all these new clients and doing these fun opportunities, and I was so busy that I literally wrote in my journal that I don't even have time to look at the pictures that I'm taking. And it didn't seem that profound whenever I was writing it, but I've mentioned that I like to go back and reread my old journals just to see how times have changed and how prayers have been answered and so on. So I had gone back to reread this portion of my journal, and whenever I wrote, I don't even have time to look at the photos that I'm taking. That now will strikes a chord with me, because that's so sad. If I'm making these memories, and you could argue that you can sleep when you're dead, you can sleep down the road, you can do all these things. And I do agree with that to an extent, but I was so up to past my eyeballs, past my ears, just drowning in things all the time, running from one thing to the next and working until late at night, that I just wasn't even able to look around and enjoy it. So I had reached the point of busyness where I felt, quote, fulfilled, or I felt that I would be fulfilled. And then I proceeded to blow way past that. And that's what was kind of the catalyst for change for me, is getting to that point with the income that I wanted, the opportunities that I wanted, the life that looks really cool where I can, post in the airport and have people be like, oh my gosh, you're always going places, and be like, yes, I am always going places. And that sounds so shallow, but if that's the honest truth, that feels really good when people think that you're so busy and so successful. I got to that point and I'm I am no happier than I was before. I now have this thing, and if anything, it makes you feel a little lost because you get that thing that you've always wanted, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, so that didn't make me happy. So then what will? Because for the longest time, I was happy, but I was working towards something and striving for this pinnacle of busy and successful and earnings and everything else. And then you can almost tell yourself like, I'll be happier when I get to that point. And the carrot is like always dangling in front of you, but you never quite get there, but you always have something to chase and to look forward to. And then once you kind of get there, you're like, oh, that I really thought that was going to be like more climactic or bigger for me. And it wasn't. So there's a little bit of hopelessness that comes with that, just because once you get everything you want, what do you want from there? So that made me reflect and realize that the only thing that had changed from when I was busying myself on purpose to get to this point, and whenever I actually got to that point, the only thing that had changed was how exhausted I was. I wasn't any happier. I wasn't any more fulfilled. I wasn't any more knowledgeable, or I was, I guess, on paper more successful. But what does that mean if you don't really feel it? I just had, less free time to spend with my friends and my husband and everything else. So I think that that's whenever it kind of clicked for me that who am I doing this for then? If it doesn't make me feel any happier, then what am I pursuing it for? And it was still a journey from there because yes, I can take things off of my plate, but then you still have these societal pressures of, well, now that I went from all of this to just doing this, like, are people going to think that I fell off? Are they going to think that no one wants to work with me? Are they going to think that I'm, it was a fluke or anything else? And I would love to just sit here and be like, oh, I operate independently of people's assumptions about me. I don't care about them. But the truth is, like, they factor in and they do cross your mind, and it's difficult sometimes to tune them out, even if they're manufactured assumptions about what people might possibly be assuming about you. It could just all be created in my own head. But that's the reality. And I think a lot of that comes from not feeling confident in who I am or not knowing who I am. And even though I've made leaps and bounds of progress over the years, it is still a work in progress. So I struggle with it from time to time. Even though I had gotten to an emotional point where I'm like, I'm ready to slow down. I'm ready to do this. Obviously, you all know our journey with trying to start a family and everything, which has since even further changed my perspective and, on what's important and what I want out of life. And sometimes that just doesn't mean being more busy. So all of those things have kind of culminated in me seeking out a more peaceful, intentional, calm stage of my life, which is a little bit difficult when you're self-employed because, I can't go too calm or we're going to have bills that are stacking up. So we got to keep that money coming in and keep the bills paid. But with that being considered that it is still my income and I need to contribute to our household, there are things that I can do to scale back and to be a lot more structured in how I grow and to be selective about the clients that I take on and the demands on my time. And I've been in a very aggressive growth phase for 3 years. So to pump the brakes now and be like, I'm not looking for any new clients on purpose. I'm stagnating on purpose, or I just want to develop my current relationships with my current clients and not add any more. That's very empowering, but I also still struggle, every time I do billing at the end of the month, being like, or at the beginning of the month, thinking like, oh, is this all I'm billing for? Should I be adding more clients? And I'm so used to the numbers being higher and growing more. But then I'm more unhurried in my days, and I'm not waking up thinking I have to be out the door by this time. And then I have to make sure I cut this meeting off by this time to get to the next thing. And I just know the frantic nature of that stage of my life and how I would feel so overwhelmed that I would get home, have to change super quick, get to the gym, get back home, hop in the shower, have dinner, and then I have all these texts and emails and everything piled up from the whole day because I've been running from one thing to the next. And the only time I can check them is if I'm at a stoplight. And then you just feel so perpetually behind. And even if it looks outwardly like you're the most successful, you feel the furthest behind and like you're dropping the ball perpetually, basically, because you're never doing all of the things that are being asked of you. So for me, having fewer things being asked of me has helped me to feel like I'm more ahead and more on top of things. And I know that I'm giving more of myself to each task. So each task in itself can be better, if that makes sense. And not just professionally, but if I have fewer social occasions during the month, then I can give more of myself and be more present and really enjoy it more because I'm not spreading myself so thin that my social battery is like hanging on by a thread. So that's kind of where I'm at right now is trying to slow myself down on purpose and really understand that there's not a correlation between how busy I am and how important I am. And for a long time, that was like my mantra. Like the more I can pack into my schedule, especially like you do feel a sense of superiority. And I it's embarrassing to say, but whenever you're talking to somebody and you're like, oh, I have this and I have this and I have this and I have to go here and I have to go here, it makes you feel like, Sex in the City, the Devil Wears Prada. Like, I'm so busy. I'm this incredible businesswoman. I'm doing all these things. And then especially when people say like, oh my gosh, like you're always doing something, that is so crazy. I let that build me up to a point that feedback is how I started to define myself. And then whenever I started taking things back off my plate, I'm like, wait, that's what everyone knows me as. Like, I'm the busy friend. I'm the constantly on the go friend. So if I'm scaling back, like, what does that make me? And the answer is still just me. And I don't think anyone likes me or surrounds himself with people due to how busy they are, some people probably go off of perceived importance, but that's not the kind of people that I want around me. So I don't know. I think that unpacking that and reminding myself that my worth has to come from me, and I have to find things that make me happy that are not just me running myself ragged, or are not done for this selfish desire to be perceived as more than I am. Because why should I be striving for more if I'm also trying to learn that I myself am enough? Now I feel like I'm just talking in parables. Basically, busyness does not equate to intrinsic value. You have to find your intrinsic value in somewhere else. Next, I have some questions for you guys. This is going to be a call out segment. So let me just go ahead and take a sip of this so I can speak loud and clearly. Delicious. So, are you busy, or are you avoiding facing your own emotions by constantly filling your schedule? Are you busy, or are you using tasks as a distraction from addressing deeper issues in your life? Are you busy, or are you seeking validation and worth from the quantity of your activities rather than their quality? Are you busy, or are you using busyness as an excuse to avoid meaningful relationships or self-reflection? Are you busy, or are you afraid of confronting your own fears and uncertainties by staying constantly occupied? Are you busy, or are you neglecting your mental and physical well-being in pursuit of perpetual productivity? Are you busy, or are you sacrificing moments of rest and relaxation to maintain the facade of importance? Are you busy, or are you filling your time with trivial tasks to avoid pursuing your passions or dreams? Are you busy, or are you prioritizing busyness over genuine connection with yourself and others? Are you busy, or are you using the appearance of busyness to mask feelings of insecurity or inadequacy? Oh my gosh. I wrote these down and I still am a little bit jarred reading them. Let's revisit a few of them. So, are you busy, or are you avoiding facing your own emotions by constantly filling your schedule? This has been me so many times in my life where I've been struggling with depression, or I've been struggling with, whatever, heartbreak, everything. And my answer is never to like retreat and to do a stereotypical like stay in bed and cry. It's always to overfill myself and just really, really avoid any occurrence of thinking or emotions, which can help you in some points, but it also, avoidance never solved anyone's problems. So next, are you busy, or are you using tasks as a distraction from addressing deeper issues? This one, I think, is kind of like restated in different ways throughout this list, but it's true. Like if you're avoiding addressing different things, like a relationship that's not satisfying, or a difficult family dynamic, or something that you haven't gotten over and you're not healing, or vendettas that you're holding, anything else, and you're filling your time to avoid doing that, and you're thinking like, I'll go to therapy one day, or I'll fix that one day, I'll think about that one day, and you're just not doing it. Are you really busy, or are you avoiding? And I think busy can tend to have a lot of overlap with just avoidance. Are you seeking validation and worth from the quantity of your activities rather than their quality? This is something I've done so many times. And even with the nonprofit world, that's one thing that I've made a conscious decision this year that I'm going to start rolling back off of different committees and things that I serve on, just because if I'm serving for 6 different events and 6 different nonprofits and causes, then I can only fundraise, my fundraising cap is at a certain point, because I can only ask so many people for so much money, and that doesn't go up based on the number of causes that I divide myself between. So at some point I'm just giving fewer donations, like drumming up fewer donations and giving less time to each cause, because I'm doing it for so many causes. So it's more worthwhile for both myself and for the causes that I'm working with to pare them down and to specialize versus just doing so many things. And that can be true in so many aspects of life. Am I just wanting to add more things to add more things, or do I really want to do these things? I don't know. That's a toughie. Am I busy, or am I using busyness as an excuse to avoid meaningful relationships or self-reflection? I'm not really somebody who avoids meaningful relationships. I actually prefer them. I love to just get deep with people on day one, but I know a lot of people that struggle with depth of connection and struggle to get, intimate emotionally. And sometimes it's easier to have a wide social circle, but keep everybody at arm's length than it is to have a close inner circle that actually intimately knows you. So ask yourself if that's something that, resonates with you. Are you busy, or are you afraid of confronting your own fears and insecurities by staying constantly occupied? Yeah, I've been there. I've done it so many times. And I think a lot of my fears and uncertainties are inadequacy, are fear of failure, fear of unimportance, fear of not mattering, all of these things. So to stay busy, it's almost been my crutch to say, no, I do matter. I'm so important. Look at all these things that I'm doing. Look at all these people that are sending me meeting requests and all these people who want to have coffee with me. Like, obviously people want to be around me. People like me. And I've used this and these overcommitments almost to prove that to myself. And getting to a point that I don't need it to be proved anymore has made these obligations sometimes seem meaningless, or I can see them for how trivial they were, because I know that the intention that I took them on with is no longer a factor in my life. Next, are you busy, or are you neglecting your mental and physical well-being in pursuit of perpetual productivity? This is a different angle, because this isn't like avoidance. This isn't compensating for something. This is busying yourself in a way that is almost an impulse. And I've been here before too. And I know that we could probably have a psychologist on. Maybe one day I will I will find one to sit and to therapize all of us. But perpetual productivity is something that I have struggled with because of the guilt that I feel when it comes to relaxation, even before I went self-employed. And that's a whole different ballgame. But I used to struggle with sleeping in, with taking naps, with, just relaxing on the weekends, because I felt like I had to justify it. And I don't know where that came from or why, but I felt like the only way that I could exist was to always be on the go. And even during the summertime, like if I had a Saturday and I spent the entire day at the pool, I would start to feel guilty even before I had work to do for myself, because I was on no one's clock at that point. There was no extra work to be done. I just felt so deeply that if I was resting, I was being lazy. And we have demonized downtime and rest and just leisure so much in our society that now it's synonymous with laziness. And that was never meant to be the case. So I think that I've done that many times where I feel like I have to find something to do with myself. Or maybe you can understand anyone who works from home or is a stay-at-home mom, where I can be fully working. Like I could be immersed in tasks and have had the most productive day. But if I'm doing it from the couch and my husband comes home, I have this weird impulse, like I have to get up and do something. And it's always been that way. I can remember back whenever I was in high school, like if I was doing homework, but then I took a nap and my parents were coming home, I would feel like I have to get up. I can't just be taking a nap, because you don't want to be seen as somebody who's just, who's lazy. So I don't know, that's something that I've definitely had to overcome. I still struggle with this now. Even yesterday, going back to the sunburn, I went to the pool because it was a beautiful day. Our neighborhood pool opened up and I was like, I'll just work from there. And of course, then my computer starts overheating and I'm annoyed because I can't see the screen. There's a glare. I'm frustrated. Now I'm hot and I'm too hot to work. And I was like, why am I feeling like I have to do this? I have the entire day. You're telling me I can't spare an hour and a half to go to the pool and then work later. I have the whole evening. I can do my stuff. It's not that big of a deal. So this guilt, even when I work for myself, even whenever I know I have the capacity to get things done and still take time off during the day, you feel like you have to justify it because God forbid somebody finds out I was at the pool. And what? That's the whole thing too. I've had this conversation with a lot of my business owner friends where you have to remind yourself that, I took this risk, so I should also take the reward. I took the risk of making no money and I took the risk of failing and everything else that comes with quitting a stable job to start a small business. So why shouldn't I also take the reward? Because I take the hard stuff. I take the calls on the evenings and weekends and the late work nights and the constant stress and, trying to stay on top of industry trends and everything else that comes with it that's maybe on the negative side. So why shouldn't I be proud of the, maybe the financial freedom that I have accomplished or the freedom of time that I've also accomplished? Why can't I take that too? because I don't feel guilty about the late nights that I'm working. I don't feel bad about that stuff. So why shouldn't I get to enjoy it at the same time? Next. Am I busy, or am I sacrificing moments of rest and relaxation to maintain a facade of importance? This sounds similar in phrasing to the previous one, but I think this is more for show, the facade of everything to maintain this perception. And I don't know, I think that I've been guilty of all of this. I'm sounding like a broken record over here. But when someone asks you what you're doing and you're really not doing anything, but you say like, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm working on a video. I'm editing a video, and you're not. You're just kind of on your phone scrolling. You're doing something else because you never want to admit like, oh, I'm not doing anything. And I want to ask myself why, because what am I afraid of? Judgment from my friends, from my husband, from my family? Like, what am I afraid of if I'm like, oh no, I'm just relaxing? And what's the point? Like, what's the problem with that? But like I said, it just goes back to society demonizing rest and sleeping in, because we have this whole image that the most productive person, and this is probably because of those Instagram whatever coaches that you see all the time, they're like, you have to get up at 3:45 in the morning and you have to chug your egg whites, and then you have to do an hour of meditation and then do a cold plunge and then do this. And that's like what has been fed to us as the most productive formula that there is. And I hate to break it to you, but they are just selling a mentality that is so borderline absurd and unattainable that people will always be striving for it and never achieve it. And that's what keeps them, these coaches, so lofty, is because they know that they're selling a lifestyle that really doesn't exist for the majority of people. And that's why they've elevated themselves to a point where they can charge for courses and charge for coaching and whatever else. But that's a high horse that I'm not going to climb onto today. But you can sleep in and still be productive. You can take naps and still be productive. You can stay home and still be productive. You can get all of your work done and still go to the pool. You can take coffee breaks and take long lunches, and you can go to bed early, and you can do all of these things and still get your work done and still be productive. And it's not a bad thing. It's not mutually exclusive to be rested and to be productive, or to be rested and fulfilled and successful. All of these things can coexist if we do it intentionally. This one is interesting. Are you busy, or are you filling your time with trivial tasks to avoid pursuing your passions or dreams? This one is very interesting because it's not something that I've personally experienced, again, but it's very valid. And I tried to diversify these enough that everyone could hopefully find something that resonates. But I have so many talented friends that have these big dreams of starting a business or pursuing a passion creatively or something else that haven't done so because they are too busy or they don't have the time to start it. And I think sometimes that's our defense mechanism. Like, the reason I haven't written that book is because I'm so busy. The reason that I haven't made that short film is because I'm just so slammed with this, or because my kids are too small, or because everything else. And those things are real and they're very valid. But I think that you have to address it with yourself. Like, are you using that as a crutch to give you that safety net? And you can justify like why these good things in my life haven't come to fruition yet is because I'm actively shielding myself from them. And that's also a hard thing to reflect on, is that I think a lot of us, me, friends, peers, strangers, we tend to say, I'm so busy. And then if you look at your schedule, how much of it is just poor time management? How much of it is us adding things and procrastinating things and just not doing things well? Or are we saying, I'll get to that tomorrow, I'll get to that tomorrow. And then all of a sudden we are busy and we are spread thin because we just didn't manage our time wisely the first go round. So some of busyness can just be, we have to reevaluate our priorities and how long it takes to get things done and just kind of suck it up and do these things. But that's really the simplest on this whole totem pole. Next, all of these kind of tie in, but the final one said, are you using busyness, the appearance of busyness, to mask feelings of insecurity or inadequacy? And I'm not going to go through that again, but for a long time, that's just how I was and how I sometimes continue to struggle with being, is I can tell myself like there's no way that I'm not important because look at everything I'm doing. And it's not like I have that exact train of thought that goes through my head, because of course that seems ridiculous to say. But whenever I'm doing all of these things, it almost just creates that in-demand feel that gives you a confidence boost. And of course, my faith says that this should be what drives me and defines me, is I should know my worth, and it comes from God, and I know who I am, and my income, my busyness, my, maternal status, nothing is is going to determine that more than what God has said about me. So it's just very different to know those things versus feel those things and sometimes put them into practice. I think that now I'm able to scale things back without really fearing guilt or fearing backlash. And I have had this chip on my shoulder for a long time to want to prove to everyone that my business is successful independently of, my husband. I'm not someone, there's that whole stereotype online where behind every successful man, there's a wife whose business loses 10K a month. I don't know if you guys have seen those jokes online. And you know what? If you're a wife whose business loses 10K a month, more power to you. That's awesome. Good for you. Get that right off for your husband. But I think that I have lived in fear of, if my job or my days look too easy, people will think, oh, she must just be propped up by her husband. Or what does he do? Like, he must do enough where she doesn't actually have to work. And you know what? Maybe one day that will be the case, and that will be fantastic. More power to stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home wives, like whatever. But that fear has driven me so far to the opposite end, where I feel like I have to prove that I can do this on my own, that I can be successful and not rely on anyone, that it's gotten to a point that I know I'm not even doing it for myself. I'm doing it for appearance's sake. And if I'm being completely honest, who's looking at me long enough to even make a judgment? Like who is really making these assumptions about my life, or who do I think is, that is causing me to have such a deep-rooted complex? And of course, part of that is just my own insecurity, is not wanting to be somebody who is dependent on someone else, but then growing to realize part of marriage is depending on someone. And there's nothing wrong with having success that's predicated on someone that you love supporting you. So that's just growth, I suppose. But now realizing that I don't have to conjure this image and prove like I'm so busy, I'm doing all these things, it takes away the fear of, okay, so what if I am working from home and I'm not shooting as much this week? Cool. What are people going to think of me? And not having this fear of what if they don't know my heart and the reason that I'm slowing down? What if they think that I'm just, like I said at the beginning, falling off? What if they think my success is running out? And again, who is sitting around thinking these things? Because nobody has the time and no one cares that much. But freeing myself from it and being like, okay, well then just let them think it. Because if I'm going to spend all of my time filling my days to create the appearance of one thing for people who don't know me to consume that appearance and make their own assumptions and judgments, I'm never going to be living an internally pleasing life. It's never going to be fulfilling for me on the inside. And I'm the one who has to wake up in my own skin, in my own brain, in my own house, my own life. I'm the one who has to do all these tasks. I'm the one who's driving to the meetings and showing up and having to be on and present and everything else. So why would I build a whole life around this facade that's solely being performed for the benefit of others? Why wouldn't I create a life that feels fulfilling to me and makes me happy? I don't know. I'm working on it. I did see a quote that I posted on my Instagram story approximately 24 hours ago. It said, "Only I decide what goes on my plate." And this is something that I've struggled with for a long time. Take a shot every time I say this is something I've struggled with. But I have this thing where every time someone texts me and says, hey, do you want to do this? Or hey, do you want to do this? Or can you help me with this? Or can I pick your brain for this? Then I take that to mean, shoot, now I have to do it. And that's just not the case. I forget that no is an option ever. So I tend to think if someone's like, hey, can you come to this? Or can you pick my brain? Or can I pick your brain on this? Or can we meet for lunch or anything else? Then, and not that I don't want to do these things. That sounds a little harsh, but basically I take someone else's desire for me to do something as an obligation being created. And that's just not the truth, because I decide what goes on my plate. Someone asking something from me in a professional or a personal sense does not obligate me to do that thing. And while I think there's a certain level of, you probably should be there for your friends, you probably should show up for people, I don't have to. If someone wants to, make plans on a Friday night and I'm just not feeling it, their desire to do something with me doesn't obligate me to now fit that thing in. And I'm especially guilty of that in a professional sense, where just because somebody wants something from me or wants, it does tend to be a lot of the like pick your brain type situations. And there's nothing wrong with those, but sometimes it's like, well, then I have to figure out how to fit in this meeting or this lunch or anything else to impart experience and knowledge or whatever onto someone else for minimal benefit to me. And not that I want to live my life in a way that's only seeking out things that are beneficial to me, but for the longest time, I didn't even think that no was an option. And now I've realized that if somebody is wanting something from me, then they need to work around your schedule and things like that. Moving forward. Just reassessing my commitments is the name of the game right now. Figuring out why I'm doing certain things. Am I doing things just because I've always done them? Am I doing things because I genuinely want to be doing them? Am I doing something because they add value or fulfillment or happiness to my life, etc.? And just trying to focus on what's only important or fulfilling, while also understanding that, I'm in a luxurious position to even have the option to take things off my plate and to say I'm only focusing on things that are fulfilling me or making me happy. When I say that, I mean the optional things. Like, I'm not at work saying I'm just not going to do my own billing this month. I'm not going to do my bookkeeping because that's not fulfilling to me. There are so many tasks. There are tasks around the house. There are tasks involving paying bills. There are maintenance things with my vehicle and, taxes and all these clerical things with my work and things that I just don't want to do. Those are not things that I can just scratch off the list because they're not fulfilling to me. I'm talking about the things that can be removed and things that I've added in kind of as an a la carte or as an extracurricular, and removing them. I also am trying to actively change the narrative in my head from villainizing villainizing downtime and glorifying busyness, to remind myself, like, it's okay if I do go to the pool and I don't take my laptop and I don't take my notes and I'm not answering emails, just to go and go for a walk, go to the gym midday, come back and work, or don't. Call it a day early and then work on the weekend if you need to. But if your things are getting done and you're, giving the best effort to the clients that pay you, I'm talking to myself, you guys aren't in the same position. But if I'm doing my best work and I'm giving the effort expected of me to the clients that pay me for that effort, why do I feel guilty for not giving 125% every single day? Anywho, I just think that we all need to look inward. Let's just take a minute, reflect. What is your schedule like this week? Are you full of meetings? Are you absolutely bedeviled with meetings, David? Or are you filling yourself with tasks that you could probably have accomplished in a lesser period of time? You're just kind of drawing them out and making them into a bigger deal. Are you avoiding that passion project or writing that book or doing that thing that you've been saying that you're going to do for years that you just somehow haven't gotten around to? Or that podcast? I know a lot of you guys have messaged me about wanting to start a podcast and I have not seen them. So you guys, I'm ready to support. Are you avoiding deeper connections by having a thriving social circle, but you're keeping everybody kind of in like your Saturn outer rim orbit versus having them come into your gravitational pull? Just assess. What are you doing? What are you filling your time with? And I also think that something that's very easily unnoticed is how the illusion of busyness can be created from our phones. So if I don't have my phone with me, like if I have a whole evening and I leave my phone on the charger or I do something else, it just creates this atmosphere of less clutter kind of in my mind and less connection. And it makes sense because you're not talking to a million people. You're not consuming a million things. You're not getting notifications. The urgency just dies down. But I think filling every single second with phone time and consumption, it increases that like frantic, constant sensation of things happening around you. So even with me, you have that impulse to pick up your phone all the time. If I'm at a stoplight, I can feel myself reaching for my phone just to scroll. Why? You're not going to consume enough in that 37 seconds that you're at the stoplight to give you anything but like one tiny little shred of dopamine. It doesn't matter. So it's more of a habit than anything. I'm not getting anything from it. It's more of just like muscle memory. So I've been trying to avoid those things, don't take your phone to the bathroom. Don't feel like you have to get on your phone every 5 seconds. Don't get on your phone during shows, and just watch how much quieter your mind gets and how much less busy things feel. And this wasn't even intentional, but I haven't been on Instagram in 24 hours. Revolutionary. I know, somebody sound the alarms, but it's because I have been kind of going from one thing to the next, and I don't want to get on it just to like half-heartedly scroll. I want to get on it when I have the time to respond to messages and to look at things and then put it down and then move on to the next thing. And then later in the day, when I have time, get back on, scroll through things, respond to messages, and then go back about my day, versus filling every single little gap and crevice with more consumption, more phone, more communication, more texting, more voice memos, because that is what creates this clutter around me, at least. And knowing that and being aware of it is a little bit different than implementing it, because I do have a phone addiction. But as with everything I've mentioned in this episode, it is a work in progress. So I hope that this has made sense. I know I've been talking in circles a little bit, but it all is so overconnected and interconnected and overlapping. Just trying to analyze why we are so busy and why we are so quick to scorn and look down on people who aren't, and people who have leisure time in their schedule. What's wrong with that? They're probably happier. So assess that. Let me know what you guys think. I would love to chit chat about this episode as per usual. So thank you for listening. I'm so happy to be sitting in this chair with you. The curtain is down behind us. The studio is undergoing renovations, like I mentioned. So we might just be switching it around for the next couple weeks, but let me know what you think. Unless it's bad, then don't let me know what you think. But hope I see you guys garage sailing this weekend. Have a wonderful time. Hope everyone is nice and safe tonight during the storms. And this episode will come out bright and early tomorrow morning. Love you guys. Bye.